name's Mark, and this is Maddie, and welcome to the Young Adults Unleashed podcast, episode 6.
You didn't make me, so you can't unmake me. This is a little catchphrase, you want that in there.
It is so good to be here. Last week we did our first episode of Table Talk, where myself and Mark just asked each other some questions. Mark's questions were kind of a little bit weird, but that's okay.
Weird questions from a weird guy.
Yes. This afternoon we have something exciting. We have our very own incredible youth pastor, Pastor Joel's coming on. Where he's going to be sharing vision, he's going to be dropping wisdom. He's currently making our team smell his fingers right now, and it's gross. But without further ado, I think we should welcome him up.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Let's click him in.
Yeah.
Alright.
3, 2, 1. Welcome, Pastor Joel.
Yeah! Hello!
Good to have you.
You too?
Yes.
It's nice. I like that you two aren't too close this week. Last week was a little bit, how you say, intimate.
No, it wasn't.
Not intimate enough, am I right, guys? Young adults for life. Youth sucks!
Do you really mean that?
I don't mean that at all.
So you are our young adults pastor, as well as youth pastor here at Celebration Church.
With my smoking hot pasty wife, yes.
Yes. And your two children.
Yes, they are also youth and young adult pastors. It's all the Mitchells together. We're a quarter of a pastor each.
Who do you think, do you think Ellie would be a better pastor or Jem would be a better pastor?
Neither, really. Yeah.
I think Jem would be a better women's pastor.
He would be a good that. And Ellie would be a good men's.
Yeah.
Reverend.
Yeah, she has leadership written all over her.
So the energy is just so high. And I had a nap today, so it's good.
It's hard.
So right now, who is your favourite child?
I was going to say, who's my favourite host?
We can do that after.
I don't have a favourite child, sorry. But this morning, I can't tell that story. So yeah, I don't. That's good.
Who's your favourite host?
Maddie.
Yes, I knew it.
I'm okay.
Why?
The future is female.
That?
Alright, so tell us more about yourself. Who are you? Who is Joel Mitchell?
I am a male. I am 31. I prefer
You
the
might need to
pronouns
prove that.
they and them because it's less offensive. Because if they say, man, I hate them, see, it's heaps less offensive than I hate
Yeah.
him. So prefer them. And I'm married. We've nearly been married for 10 years. 2 kids, as you
Do
said.
you know I was at your wedding? How weird is that?
Were you just like in a kayak because we were near the water and you're just like, hey guys.
No, I
Were you
came.
like 6 years old?
I came with Beck. Beck was serving at it, like walking around
Couple of
with
ships
things,
even invited.
and I
It was very exclusive.
It was, and I felt so, like, I don't know how I did it, but I was there, and I got paid for it.
Who paid you?
I think Alex's mum.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Rich.
How much?
I don't remember. It wasn't like a huge amount.
I got paid for being at that wedding as well. When they die! Hashtag will joke. So yes, married 10 years, 2 kids, youth and young adults pastor here. Alex is a psychologist. I am a genius, and that's us. Very complicated.
Yeah. What's it like being married to a psychologist?
Good. There's a lot of things I can help her with. Help her get through.
They do say psychologists are more crazy than their patients.
Do they?
No, I saw
Who
it
are they?
in a movie once.
The criminal minds. Yeah, they and them.
I think it was a
Good
Facebook
pronouns.
post.
Okay. From Mark. I like it.
Yeah. That was like 2013 Facebook status.
Imagine if we did the rest of this all looking directly at the camera and never making eye contact with each other.
I think that sounds like a great
If
idea.
we just stayed here. And we're like, yes, good joke, Maddie. Nailed it.
So, Joel, what about you makes you a genius?
Wow, that's a very
Self-proclaimed.
triggering question.
Self-proclaimed genius.
The fact that I can say it and anyone can say they're a genius, so I just did it. I need you to look at
Yeah.
it. So,
We're not doing this
I
anymore.
don't know, you need to go see a psychologist, I think. So, yep. Because you can say it, and I did, so it's done.
I am the best person in the world.
Mark is the brownest person here.
Yeah,
True.
They're really looking at us as well.
they
Like,
do, and they
they
sometimes
don't
say
look
things.
anywhere else. Like every
Kind
other
of just like zone.
behind the scene things, everyone's just obviously wandering around.
Well, it
But
means
they're
it must
really
be really
here.
engaging.
Wow,
You know,
okay.
if they're look, Michael's loving it.
It's very, like, I'm just intimidated. Do you know what it's like to be in bright lights and 6 people looking directly at you?
That's,
Yeah, I
don't
feel
you
like
I'm back in
agree?
prison. Oh yeah, okay, that's kind of what it's like then.
But it's like this.
Yeah, they're sadder.
Yeah.
These guys are way too excited. So they're gonna get money or something?
I think
Are they
Lynn's
being
fallen
paid?
asleep.
Is Alex's mum paying them as well?
They've made it into the will.
Nice.
We just want to ask you a few questions, but I think for today, because this is our Young Adults podcast, we just want to hear about your heart for young adults, and even if you could, like, maybe vision us a little bit of, because we're about to come out of this isolation, we're about to start coming back to connects, and church is going to come back, and young adults is going to come back bigger, better than ever. So, and we don't want to come back as we were, because that's boring.
We were yuck.
Actual.
Yeah.
So even your message today was awesome. It's like that church is boring, average is boring. We're not made to be that. We're citizens of heaven, so heaven is on earth when we're here. So we need to
Preach.
cultivate that. So if you can just maybe share a little bit of your heart of young adults and what you see of the revival culture, especially in young adults, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So I think it's a similar heart for all of the demographics in our church. But if I was to think specifically about young adults, I would say they have an opportunity in the season we're coming in to be the creators of a movement rather than just growing up in a movement. So we often talk about, like, what church are we leaving for the next generations?
Yeah.
Young adults have a opportunity in this next season to actually kind of pen what that history looks like, rather than just be like, oh yeah, this was a normal that I grew up in. So I think people have gone before us and pioneered and led us to this point, but the question is, do we build on their shoulders as well? So I guess if I was to vision of what young adults looks like, it looks like crazy people, visionary people, wild people, people that are willing to believe God, that He can and will do impossible things, and they won't accept less than that. So I think it's easy to dumb that down and be like young adults that are, employers rather than employees, or innovation, or just go to culture. But I'd go further to say, like, people that legitimately alter history, that alter a dynamic, that create new industry, that make our city a different place. So I would just say young adults have the opportunity to do that in this season. I would say probably easier than anyone else, because, my 4-year-old son doesn't have as many opportunities right now as our young adults do to change the world, because he has to be driven around places, and it's very difficult.
In saying that, a lot of the young adults still need to be driven around.
Wow, embarrassing.
Yeah. Get your P's.
Don't lose your license for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, agree.
Do you want to tell us about, is there a story behind that?
I lost my license for 2 years because I was going to Hillsong Bible College.
It's all their fault.
It's all
yeah.
their fault.
And I was driving slightly, how you would say, recklessly.
That's the term they use.
That's the term that they used in a court of law. And I lost my license for 2 years. So they followed me. I was tailgating a car through JB because they were going way too slow. And then I eventually overtook them before the highway was finished. And then overtook them, did some sweet maneuvers. And then the car that I'd been tailgating followed me. And it was an undercover detective's car. And he fined me for everything he could for 15 kilometres.
I remember you went for your L's test once, and I drove you there because you had that car that would not go past.
I failed twice.
Wait, what?
I failed not at all when I was like 16, and then when I was like 24, 25, I failed twice. The first time was because I didn't blinker off a roundabout, because that wasn't a law when I got taught how to drive. And the second time, my car broke down.
And they fully
Horrid
made
cruise.
you could have gotten back to the RTA, but in like first gear or something, but they're like, no, we need you to
he
pull
got
off the
picked up.
highway.
Yeah, the guy got picked up and left me there in the car, defeated.
I thought something horrific happened because I was just waiting at the RTA. I'm like, are you Maddie? Are you waiting for Joel?
Did you drive me to the RTA?
Yeah.
Deleted that out of my memory.
And then I was like, yeah.
You're in all of my memories in the
Yeah.
back.
And it's
You're at my
waiting.
wedding.
Yeah.
Did you get paid to drive into that?
Yeah.
No,
Alex
and
will
then,
pay you again.
and then
AMP would be my friend for years.
they were like, oh, you need to come with us. Something's happened. I was like, no way. Like, he's been an accident.
Not another murder.
And then Alex had to come, and it was great.
Oh, there you go. Why are your seats higher than my seat? Like, is that like a
Power play.
power play or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Continue. That was a power play.
Yeah.
So to bring it back, you mentioned how I guess the new wave of young adults, I guess out of isolation, is to be creators and I guess revolutionizing and building. What does that look like practically? So it's great to, I guess, dream and be like, this is how we want to look, but do you have any thoughts on how practically we can be that?
Yeah, I think if you're a visionary, you are trying to show people an ideal, a world that they haven't seen yet, and to a large degree that you can't articulate how God has placed it on your heart. So I think an important key, and I'm actually talking to our youth and young adult team tonight, which is Sunday. What? This isn't live? I don't know why anyone would think this is live.
Secrets out.
So a few days before this is airing.
Eric.
This is 1990. We're airing things before Rage TV. You guys don't get any of these jokes because you're all
Is
15.
that like Cheese
That's
TV?
funny.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Cheese TV was good.
There'll be a picture of the PSC. I just want to start saying that in everything that I'm on.
Every time you say it.
Everything
We'll
that
have to
I'm
find
on.
a picture later.
What's your question? What are you talking about?
What does it look like practically to
Oh,
be
yeah.
those young adults?
So I think you're trying to help people see a vision. That vision is ultimately heaven and the ideals of heaven.
Yeah.
But I think an important step that we will do as a church, and maybe remind people as a church, is just articulating again what it isn't. Because I think if you want to end up with an ideal, if you want to create a better future, it's just important to remember what you're leaving behind. So I think even practically what it looks like is it's kind of like raging against norm. Like it's like, I refuse to be this, like I will revolt against this, like I will fight against this, like that isn't okay, that isn't my norm. I'm not going to settle in this culture and be like, I can be different from it whilst being like up to my neck in it. But instead, like actually separating ourselves a little bit and actually standing up a little bit and being loud a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think we've often said, or no, it's been often said, it's just a very clean statement, be known for what you stand for rather than what you stand against.
Yeah.
But actually, what you actually stand against is very powerful.
Yeah.
To a degree, it's often more loud and noticeable than what you stand for. Because I can be like, I stand for cheap groceries. But it's different than me like throwing a brick through the window of Woolworths. Too intense.
Is there a story behind that one?
Not that we'll go into. So that was
I was there.
yesterday. Yeah.
You were paid to be there.
Yeah. It's good. So I think actually being like fighting against norm and not just settling, but actually being very uncomfortable in less than heaven, I think is a good step.
Yeah.
When it comes to revival, when it comes to a revolution, or when it comes to making a better future. Otherwise, we just get really, satisfied, comfortable, and we find ourselves here again in 3 years, and young adults soon become old adults, and another generation has to pick up the call of fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Does that help? Zoom in on me. Not with the camera, Ash. Just afterwards. Back out.
I can, yeah, okay.
Picture.
When
Text.
we're talking about this,
Maddie's bank account details. Mark's feet. It's gonna be the best.
when we're talking about this,
Censored image.
I think,
Yeah. When we're talking about this,
Yeah.
ignore Mark. Yeah.
when we are all talking about this,
Well, we are all talking about
I think when I
Anyway.
think about it, I think it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on it in your message today, Sunday, about that that's normal for us if we are kind of Christians, if we can call ourselves that, and heaven is our home. But I think it comes at a cost of sacrificing yourself and laying your life down. Can you kind of, I don't know, speak into that a little bit? Because I think maybe even like for leaders, like even like some of our team watch, and I know people that are watching that are our potential new leaders and people that are kind of progressing with their relationship with God, of what it actually means to sacrifice again.
Yeah.
Because in your message you were like, the revivalers came for the revival. So it's obviously, if we're not seeing revival right now, there must be something that we need to kind of lay down and work on or become or step into, of something to see it kind of be shaken up.
I think cost is relative. So I think everyone needs to pay a cost. So at the moment, like me and Pastor Benoit, I'll just say this, we recorded an interview to be played today in church. We went through it, and then kind of like the first take through, we're like, it's too, not watered down, but it's not wild enough, it's too safe, it's too tame, it's not unleashed.
Yeah.
So maybe we should have come here and had a conversation. And then we did a second take. And then so at the end of it, just those 2 or 3 takes, we had about 2 hours and 30 minutes of us just talking about revival, and it still wasn't crazy enough. So I think in a lot of that conversation we were having, it was like, there's a cost to revival church. Even Pastor Charlie's message last week in church, talking about how messy revival is.
Yeah.
There's a cost in it, but often what we pitch is like the cost is you'll lose your seat, or the cost is it might be inconvenient. But that's the cost of the follower of the revival. It's actually not the cost of the leader, because the cost of the leader is your, unseen, your raging and trying to violently take the kingdom to a place that no one's seen. But like the cost is much, much bigger than, oh no, this was uncomfortable to see 2,000 people at church. But it's, no, we will fight against feeling comfortable. Like the feeling comfortable in church is something that we will rage against in ourselves as leaders. So I think cost is relative. So what is inconvenient for someone that comes to church for convenient is very different to a pastor or a leader that already doesn't come to church because it's convenient, but because they want to build the house of God, they want to be obedient to that. So I think the price is not, like, actually, if we sit in our seats right now and that feeling of comfort, I think spiritually we have to make a decision to not feel that. To actually be like, the need is so great, I want to open my eyes and I see that. And like I said in my message today, like I want to feel that feeling of, God, I trust you, God, I need you, more than I don't feel it. Which is, that's a cost. Because you're not settling in your seat properly, and you're like, there is a difference between my faith and my reality, and I have to kind of wrestle that a little bit.
And I guess you have a choice to fight it or to let it be your normal.
And I think making a decision to fight that maybe stops some other fake fights we have as well. Of like, oh no, this isn't happening. Oh wow, oh my But when you're fighting an actual real fight, where you're like, no, will we see a city saved or won't we? Will we see domestic violence drop and ice addictions be eradicated and issues that are wrong, that are injustices, be corrected? Once you focus on a bigger fight, then it gets a lot less about like, oh no, how do I wind down watching 3 hours of Netflix? Oh, it's not working. Oh no, where? Like there's just, we fight like all these imaginary fights because we forget that people are going to hell, or at very least that they're experiencing hell here. So we can do something about that. So I think once you make a decision, I'm not going to be comfortable anymore, you play the actual real game.
Just off Netflix, did you watch Space Force?
I have not.
Have you?
Not yet.
I finished it.
I've never watched Netflix before. I've only watched The Passion of the Christ on repeat.
What are some tools that you've found help you?
Hammers.
Maddie. Wait.
I'm a tool,
Tools for Jesus! Tool in the house of God. Sounds heaps weirder than what I said.
What are some tools that you've, I guess, used in your life that have helped you in, I guess, fighting for the right things, or some of the sacrifices you've made in the past to get you where you are now?
I think I have some that are probably internal things I can talk about, but I think also I think just surrounding yourself with an actual leader. I can't remember where. There's a plan. There's some meeting in the next few weeks about talking about the difference between friendship and leadership. I think that is something that needs to be concreted further in like our young adults community. That your leader is not someone that's supposed to be your best friend. Friends are fantastic, but leaders are better. Leaders are actually a person that says, I can see further than you, and I can see what God has for you, therefore I'm going to speak into that thing. So I think one of the tools that I've had is actually had someone like Pastor Benaiah, who's been my leader since I was 15, so it's coming up to 16 years. Like I've been in his connect for that long. And I would say he's constantly reminding me that I can be better, and not, I think people think that means like, oh, it's always challenging and it's just good to have someone in your corner that believes that you haven't arrived. Because my head tells me I haven't arrived. And I think a lot of people fight those sorts as well. Like, no, you're a beautiful butterfly, you're perfect. No, you're not. It's okay to be like, oh, I'm not there yet. But having someone in your corner that actually mirrors back God's grace, which is like you can do it. So I think that's a big tool. And I think a lot of people have voices and friends and mentors and leaders that relationship isn't what they think it is. So I think actually having a leader that'll be honest, and I think you've got to fight for that. I think you've got to prove yourself in that. You've got to prove yourself to be trustworthy as someone that's being mentored. Because I think when I was 16, I remember asking Pastor Benaiah, I was 17 when me and Alex first started dating. Their family was going on on a snow trip, and I was like, I'll go with them. Rich snow family. We don't go on any holidays in my house. We go to the river for a holiday and sleep there. That's not true. If you're watching this, Mum and Dad, how did you discover the internet? Didn't know you knew about that thing. You're not. So I can talk about you right now. And Pastor Benaiah said, you can do that, but do you want the youth that you're leading to go on holidays with their girlfriend's family? And I was like, well, it depends what their family's like. And then I thought it through. I was like, no, I need to be a leader that sets an example so that it can be followed badly and someone still doesn't wreck their life. So the way that I responded when I was 16 or 17 in that situation allowed Pastor Benaiah to speak into me when I was 18 and 19 and 20. So I think even proving yourself to someone that ultimately is going to be one of the greatest tools or the greatest things that is used to build you, so a mentor. And secondly, I would just say that I think if you're a person that's led primarily by your feelings, that's okay, but your feelings aren't smart. See the text is appearing here. Feelings aren't smart. Feelings are great motivators, but you need to actually stop and process and think about, why do I feel that way, and what strategy can I put in place to actually make a difference. So on the Myers-Briggs 16 personalities thing, I'm between 85 and 92% thinking over feeling. So I think because I do a lot of that thinking and processing of like, what do I need to change? What could be better? I see this problem right now. Let me sit down and think through solutions of what God has done in the past, and then allow Him to speak to me that what's an ideal that could flip and change this thing right now. So I think just that. I think actually taking time and making room for yourself to actually think. I think a lot of people make a lot of dumb decisions because they spent no time thinking about it. I said it to someone this week. No one talking about overthinking. Like if you ever say like in your head, am I overthinking this? 100% you are. But that doesn't mean you can overthink and still do action. So the reason why overthinking is bad, or the reason why no thinking is bad, is like if someone's like doing a line of coke, they never think like right before, am I overthinking this? Like they don't think at all. So that's probably not the best level. But overthinking is when you fight a battle inside of your head without participating in the real battle. So I think there's a balance between I'm not thinking at all and I'm just making really dumb decisions that are hurting other people. Or then overthinking is when you just think without action. I think you can't overthink if you're actioning.
Right.
But that overthinking, like acting like it's the enemy to action, I think you can be a very intentional person of why. kind of writing who you want to be and your culture and what you want to be known for, without just letting someone else dictate that to you. So I'd say that's a tool as well, just being a thinker and making some margin in your life to actually take some time to think and dream. And what if today was different? What if I had twice the income? How could I make twice the income? What are the, like, just thinking through really simple questions that would revolutionize every area.
Yeah. Do you think with your thinking...
I think Ash just yawned out of the corner of my eye just then, but you continue.
Confess.
Did she?
Yeah.
See, I see everything! Everything!
Yeah.
Sorry guys, the camera makes me do crazy things. We were at Bunnings the other day. You weren't there. I don't think. You might have been there. You tend to be there.
Paid to be there.
And these old people cut us off and took our parking spot. If you take someone's parking spot, you are just a human trash bag.
Like they knew you were going to park there and they parked there?
Yeah, oh, they knew, alright, they knew.
You can see it in their eyes.
Oh man, they
You
knew.
see it, they
I don't know
eyes.
if they knew. But we got out, and then I said really loudly, yeah, if you've had cold symptoms for 3 weeks, you should probably go get tested. And they're putting their masks on as me and Mike are walking past. And this guy does this! Coughs so loudly, and then they left. They didn't come in to hang out with us. We should have moved our car into their spot. None of that story is true. We made it up as we went just then.
Yeah.
Well,
And that's what creativity looks like.
Improv.
Flourish.
Or it's true and no one knows now. So.
Do you ever feel like you struggle with compassion? Or like empathy?
Yeah, especially given you said your thinking is, what, 92%?
Yeah, between 85 and 92,
It's pretty high. It doesn't leave much for feeling.
Mm.
Yeah, so it'd be great to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think if I'm thinking 92%, it's quite likely that I'm thinking about the problem dozens more time than someone is feeling about it. So just because I'm thought-based, it doesn't mean that I'm not moving towards a huge need that is an injustice. If anything, well, as a thinker would say, if anything, I'm moving towards a more logically ready to change it. Because it is wrong and because I understand why it's wrong. So I wouldn't say that I have a problem with compassion. I would say that if anything, I probably have internalized it a lot more than someone who's just like, oh, I'm so moved by that. I'm like, no, that's horrible. Like, there has to be a solution to that. We can do something about that. And because it's, I guess, very thought-based, I can see quite clearly, very quickly, what could be said or what could be done now to bring an actual resolution to this thing. So I'd say the only thing that it lacks in is my ability to hear a story from Alex's hard day and be like, oh. So I think but that's every man and husband that I've met so far that isn't in like problem solving mode. So I don't think I can blame my briggies for that.
What are your thoughts on personality tests? Are they useful? Should they be done by everyone?
I think our generation is the most obsessed with giving themselves labels and rejecting labels of any generation in history.
Yeah.
So I think if you're doing a test to give yourself a label to be like, that's why no one likes me, or that's why I don't do that, and you're looking for a label to excuse behaviour, I think that's not what a label is useful for. I think a label is useful to bring you up into a better reality. So I think it's notorious of our generation to seek the wrong labels and to reject the right labels. So if you're doing a personality test, helps you to be like, oh wow, that's a strength that I have, awesome. But even just then where I'm like, I'm 80% introvert, so this is hell for me, is also a way of seeing the negative in it rather than be like, oh, okay, I need to be mindful of the fact that I can get a lot of energy if I just sit in a small, dark, cold, wet room by myself and then go out and change the world. And it's that simple. I just want it to be wet. It's like a dungeon in my head. Maddie's probably there in the background. She normally is.
How did you escape the dungeon?
I don't know. I was in the ghetto and then I got to the dungeon and I've stayed there since. So I think, when you seek labels to be like, oh, that's who I am now, there's not many labels that I think are helpful like chosen by God, made in His image, that's a big enough one that'll blow your mindset for the rest of your life if you actually consider the fact the Bible tells us that you're made in the image of God, the image of God.
Yeah.
And it's not like I said today in church, like it's not like an ugly cousin version. It's you being His ambassador on the earth. So grab one of those labels and reject one of the other labels that's like, you know,
For sure.
other ones.
I think we can use them as excuses as well. Like, oh, I'm an introvert, so I'm not going to hang out with you guys, even though that could potentially build me and have people speak life over me and that kind of thing. I'm going to avoid it because people are draining.
say that.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Or Jesus when He was like, oh, I'm shy, I don't want to be crucified. Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So when people use like their...
I'm a sentinel.
Yeah, they use those simple things, which are true. All that means is it's a sacrifice for you to do it.
Yeah.
And sacrifice isn't bad.
Yeah.
And it's difficult for you to do it, or it's hard, or it's overwhelming, or it's you feel weak. Cool. That's okay. Like that's not something to be terrified of.
Yeah.
Being uncomfortable and being out of your depth is something that will make you great, not bad.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hit the roof.
You can still see.
Freak.
Oh my gosh.
No, special effects. Daddy gets his bottle.
Do you know Mark edits all of these?
2 interns in the room and no one's getting me that towel. Use that in there.
Oh man. We've talked a lot about thoughts. And even just thoughts and versus feelings. I thought it'd be great if you could speak to us a bit more about the power of thoughts and I guess mentality and what we focus on. And so I wanted to share a quick Bible verse. I know, come on. So Romans.
Song of Songs.
Favorite book. Yeah, Romans 8, verse 5 and 6.
Can you recite it?
Romans 8 verse 5 and 6.
Mm.
What translation would you like?
ESV.
No, thank you.
Passion?
Over to you, Mark.
I don't do ESV.
Wrong translation.
So the end of verse 5, it says, but those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on the things of the Spirit. For to set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. I think that's quite a timely kind of verse for what's going on now and where we set our minds on. And there's so much death and sickness happening, I guess, across the globe with the pandemic. I thought it'd be great if you could speak on that life and peace that we can have if we set our minds on the Spirit. Why is it important? What does it look like for you in your life? And how have you kind of intentionally done that?
I think I have a predisposition to always think first. Like that's what those tests will tell me. Like I am set that way. And if I can work that well, then that produces great fruit. I'm a big fan of admitting, like even like if there's a lie from the enemy that is kind of true, I like to admit those things. So like, you can't do it, Joel. Like I'm okay thinking that. I'm okay also living in the reality of like, whoa, I can't do what I'm doing right now. But God can. So I think admitting like those smaller thoughts, I don't even need to fight that because I know that I can't do it. Like I know that even what I'm doing right now is impossible for who I am without God. So that's cool. Like I can tick that thought away and be like, you can come on the trip with me. You won't drive the car, but you can be in the back seat and you can remind me every so often that how did you even get invited to this party? Like how are you even here? Because it doesn't make sense. Cool, you can stay there. I like you. You keep me humble. Come for the journey and shout out whenever you need to when my head's getting too big and you can't see. So you scream or the music's not good. But I think the thought that I choose to let me to drive my car is actually to a huge degree my choice. Like I get to choose whether I am stuck or not good enough, and that's the thing that is directing my entire life, or if it's not. So I think, how do I do that? I think I just make room to think through, like, am I okay end goal right now to believe this truth and therefore to live it and be the cause of my actions, or am I not okay with it? And if I'm not okay with it, I don't really need to go to a mentor or to a leader or to a Sunday service or listen to another sermon. All I need to do is accept what the Bible says about me, and accept what the Bible says about all characters that follow him. There's always these slants of it was impossible, yet they did it. They were faith people, yet together with us it's perfected. The world was not worthy of them. Hebrews 11, all that kind of stuff. So how do you do that? You just make room to allow God to direct your thoughts and choose to think about some things and choose not to think about others. You have the choice whether to think about that time you were victimized every single day. And every single hour, like, you actually have that choice, and maybe you need some help to control your thoughts again, to move those things on. But the worst thing you can do if, like, someone has wronged you or victimized you or lied to you is allow them to do that again and again in your head thousands and thousands of times, and concrete a normality and concrete someone driving your car that has nothing to do with you at all. So I think it's important to just be like, no, I choose to believe that, but you sit in the back, that's a lie, or that is such a lie, it's true. Like, I think people have said to me before, I guess because I'm very thought-based, that it's too calculated, and then it can be that manipulative if you're putting so much thought into what you're saying and how that's going to respond. No, that's just who I am. So what to you was manipulative or forceful, to me is intentional good leadership. So your lie was so true, I love it. But your perception of the whole thing was just wrong, because you assumed that my motive and my agenda was about me, not compassion, because it was thought-based. So,
And I think so often we forget that.
Oh my gosh, we do. We forget all types of things. We forget our car keys, we forget which one's our wife, which one isn't our wife. Like, we forget all of those things so often. Your mind is your responsibility, but also there's a lot of things that are your responsibility. And I also think our generation is notorious for being like, how's your head? What's going in your mind? What's going on? And we can be overwhelmed by trying to solve every little thing in our head, either before action or a reason to not act. Like, I'm going to arrive somewhere and then I'll finally be kind, or I'll finally be compassionate, or once I stop being shy, then I'll talk to a new person, or then I'll stop someone from going to hell because I simply reach out to them and invite them to church and their life is transformed forever. But when I finally get to that point, then I'll actually do it. So I think your mind is your responsibility, but it's also to keep your mind, like, reminding yourself, like, your feelings, your processing, your disappointment, all of those things are a part of you. They're not you. And I think keeping them to like a 5 to 10% ratio is a lot smarter, and realizing the things that energize you and life you and build the church and make you more like the person you're called to be, and then keep, like, your little dark secrets and the things you're working on and the things you need to forgive and move on as a part of your day. But man, don't be overwhelmed by fighting an invisible battle, because that's what a lot of mind is. It's, what do I feel? What am I thinking? How do I stop this? Oh, I can't. I'm going to think about it. Then stop thinking about it for a second and just do something that you know that you should do.
And one helpful tip that I've learned from college, I'm not sure if it got into the last week, but I always try to give myself 24 hours of, like, there's some emotions and some feelings you feel for a long time, especially if you've had, like, trauma going in your life or different situations, that those things do take a lot.
Yeah, when that family cut me and Mark off at Bunnings, man, we sat in the car for what?
2 hours?
5 seconds?
Okay,
2 hours.
Yeah, we had to play worship, we had to just reset our minds, our hearts.
Because I think we either go to the extreme of, I don't want to feel that, I don't want to feel it, let's push it away, I don't want to do it. Or we go to the other extreme where it's like, I'm going to let this overwhelm my life for such a long period of time when it's so unnecessary. So it's like training yourself to be like, okay, I'm really offended right now, I'm going to give myself 24 hours, I'm going to feel that offense. I'm not going to act out of it, but I'm going to allow myself to feel it, or if I'm feeling a bit emotional, feel it, realize why I was doing it, and then kind of give it to God, release it. If I need to move on, or if it's something deeper, work towards it.
I think important is, like, also if you're a leader, often you don't have the opportunity to be like, oh, I'm going to go I'm going to go process this, or I'm going to do those
Yeah.
things. Or if you're a parent, or if you're in your workplace, or like there's
Yeah.
so many, whenever there's a level of responsibility, you actually don't have the moment to do that. But I think noting it and being like, okay, wow, is that the 11th time that person has offended me? Why? Like, am I honouring them in such a way that I value their words so much that when they say something and I hear it that way and how it hits me, is that it? Or is it they offend me because I don't believe they have the best for me? Like, actually noting those things so you get to the ending, you're like, oh, okay. Whether that's like, dear diary, today Joel hurt me again.
That's just my diary. Joel came into the office with a whippersnapper.
Okay, one time I hit you in the eye with a whippersnapper. Don't keep on bringing it up.
I don't write. I can't keep a diary. It doesn't work.
It's because Ryan always reads it. But I think actually stopping and be like noting those things, because then you start to realize, okay, wow, I'm a really offended person.
Mm.
Like, oh wow, like I get offended a lot, or I get frustrated a lot, or I get tired a lot, or I get disappointed a lot. And I think actually taking those times to see like the broader picture of like your experience in the world is actually pretty eye-opening.
Yeah.
Or like, wow, really dramatic things happen to me, and it takes me 6 months to realize that they were dramatic. Like, just because I have that, like, it takes me a while to process. Whoa, that was actually really intense.
Mm.
So I have learnt not to respond until I actually work out how I want to respond
Yeah.
with the man that I want to be, and
Yeah.
like the leader that I want to be, or the father that I want to be. So I just sit on it for a very long time. Like, I can't process it. Alex said this thing to me once when we were early on in marriage, and she was helping me deal with the stresses of life. And she said, like a tactic, and this is old Alex, okay? This is uni Alex. This isn't 7 years out of uni and clinical psychologist Alex. She said one of like the tips that psychology will give you is making a decision to not think about it in that moment, but then to put aside a time in the day to think deeply about it. And I said, if I took all of my dark thoughts and immersed myself in them for 5 minutes, I don't know if I'd be able to come back out. So I think, which is just a reflection on obviously how twisted and messed up I am, and how much I love Law and Order SVU. Love it. Okay, that sounds like I want to kill people, but that's not what I'm saying. But I think making a decision to actually, take some time to think and process things, but still not to give yourself over to thoughts, because thoughts aren't king. And they're not, thoughts are something that flows through your head. Thoughts actually aren't you. To a huge degree, they could not be a reflection of your character, but a response and a decision. There's lots of reasons why you think and do things. So making a decision to process them, but also not let them take the wheel still, because they'll crash the car every time.
Yeah.
And I would know. I'm a reckless driver.
Yeah, I found personally asking myself every time I've gotten offended, or just taking a moment to pause and asking myself, why am I offended? Is there a bit of truth to this? And just using it as a chance to actually analyze myself a bit and grow from it, and just use offense as a tool to actually be better. I found that's quite helpful. And
Should we
tends to
also the
locate
last
me.
time we were offended?
Can I say a quote? This is one of the most well-known quotes, or the most quoted things that I've ever said that Nat Curtis said. Reverend Nat Curtis. And he said, if you get offended by something, it's because you believe there's a part of you that believes it to be true.
Yeah.
Which is true.
Did he make that up?
I don't know. He just said it to me once, and I was
He's
like,
claimed it.
whoa. Which is true 90% of the time, but then just 10%, it's just someone being a jerk. And you don't believe it's true anyway, because if I call you a filthy dog enough, you might not believe you're a filthy dog. You'd be like, no mean still. That offends me. But actually, they could, to a large degree, be like, oh, why do I believe that? Or why that person's saying it? Why does it hit me that way? And just making sure we guard our heart well, because there's no person, by God, that we shouldn't be, to a degree, guarding our heart over, because guard your heart above all things that is the world realised. So I think it's important to make sure we've got those, okay, why does this offend me? What's going on here? Why do I believe this thing about me?
Yeah.
Just to switch it up, one thing I just feel like it got brought to my mind is the longevity. I think with young adults, it's a very there's a honeymoon period. Like, I feel like with
Come on, tell me more.
everyone that gets saved in commits to church. There's a honeymoon period, and then
You go to Hamilton Island, a giant islander woman gives you a massage, she puts both of her knees on your back. It's your first massage, so you think, is this what's supposed to happen? But then you feel your spine slowly moving, and then you hear it touch your ribcage at the front of your body, and you realise, wow, this 400-pound islander woman has broken my spine. Then you're in a wheelchair for the rest of your honeymoon, you fly back, and then you start your marriage together with your wife. I get it. Your honeymoon period.
Wait, is your wife the 400-pound islander woman?
whoa.
The real question is, why did I even mention that she was an islander woman?
Yeah.
Why was it necessary?
That's-
Why was the fact that we were on Hamilton Island not enough to tell you that she was a woman of the island? Because that's what I mean when I say islander woman.
a woman of the island.
She was just on the island.
Anyway,
But you all assumed that I meant.
I think a lot of they have that honeymoon period, and then they kind of get into kind of the real life of church, where maybe it might be a little bit messy, or it might be a little bit overwhelming, or it might be a little bit like they're still new, they're not used to it, they haven't really been part of a team before or served in different areas, and it kind of gets to the okay, now I have to really make a choice if this is what I'm actually going to stick to. Not instead of everyone encouraging me to do it. So even like speaking into that of like how do you maintain the longevity and even a relationship with God, and even coming back into real life, like I think even in ISO there's a lot of things, like even myself I was doing a lot of things like TSU and reading my Bible more than I ever was and worshipping and stuff, and then kind of coming back into real life. Those things don't really fade away, but the priorities change a little bit. So even just longevity in that, even longevity with committing to a local church.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, I should. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I was like, is it supposed to go up at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've said like before, like if people come into churches, especially like seeker-friendly churches, which just is a really weird way of saying a church that allows people that are looking for God. Is seeker-friendly, like it's used as a negative term, but what it means is
seeker friendly or super friendly?
super friendly, yeah. The people come in, they put their hand up quickly, they respond in an altar call, and then they finish a honeymoon period and they realise something different. I think it's important. It's very hard to articulate every single Sunday or every single Friday night or every single experience. A pastor to stand up there and be like, okay, I'm going to talk about how much of the Christian faith is sacrificial and how much I've sacrificed this week, without looking like a psycho that's constantly talking about themselves.
Right.
So I think when people hear the good news of the gospel, they need to also read not just the words on scripture, but read examples. So read leaders and read pastors and read people that go before you, because if you look at a healthy church's leaders and pastors, you will see sacrifice, you will see doing things because you choose to believe them by faith rather than by you've got all the answers. So I think people will think this is going to be really easy, but if they actually open their eyes and look at the examples in front of them, they're actually people that aren't afraid of sacrifice or aren't afraid to wrestle or aren't afraid of being inconvenient. Like they even listen to a message and they don't realise the dozens of not just hours, but to a large degree the years and years and years that go into making that testimony rather than just theory listed off some vlog or some blog. I was supposed to say vlogs are cool, blogs are terrible, right? So I think it's important to like wake up and be like, oh, I gave my life to Jesus. Oh, I have to be sacrificial? That's not what I signed up for. No, that's what you did sign up for. Like you signed up for giving yourself and your life to him. Therefore, he gets to lead you, he gets to guide you. The God of the Bible is the one that is directing you in situations, and the Word of God is alive on the inside. So I think it's important to actually understand, for young adults, for youth, for kids, for everyone, when it comes to us being a Christian, we have to understand that the goal isn't ease. And it isn't pitched as ease, but I think people misunderstand or don't actually open their eyes and look, and they think everyone's fake or two-dimensional. No, it's a deep walking with Jesus is this intimate, awesome journey and this adventure, but it takes, to a huge degree, losing parts of yourself and discovering parts of Him, which isn't bad, but it is challenging. So I think it's good that the honeymoon period ends, because if the honeymoon period didn't end, you'd never build a marriage, and you'd never build the rest of your life, and you'd never pioneer anything, and you'd never make room for your children and their children, and so that has to end. I think if someone's still in like this, no, it has to become real. Because I think once my honeymoon was over and I got out of my wheelchair and I was back in real life, I got to start building my life with my best friend at the time. My new best friend is Ellie, because she is just hilarious. The things that she can do are astonishing.
Can you give us one?
Today we were at the park and she just made a decision to try and get as much seam as she could in her clothes, which is just a 10 out of 10 decision. But not by putting it in there, by just kind of like rolling in it. So that was great.
Did you find any weird envelopes there?
No. Do you ask everyone that question?
Yeah.
What did you do today? Oh, I went out to the shops. Did you find any good envelopes though?
No.
Do you lose an envelope somewhere once?
Still
5 years ago.
I'm gonna scavenger hunt as a personal scavenger.
I've got 10 envelopes around the world and I'm trying to find them.
She's forgotten where she's put them.
Yeah, she did a bunch of coke. So I think, yes, with personality tests. Yeah, I think
Is there a real test for that?
longevity, it's when you do Myers-Briggs, but you get 7 different results 7 different times. But I think, longevity is realising, and it's also being like, not can I do this for a year, but can I do this for the rest of my life? I think once you just make some decisions about those things, and you're not like, oh, this is going to be 2020 is my year. This is your whole life. Okay, every year is your year. Move on. What you do with those years is something either awesome or something disgustingly bland and disgustingly average. And one day I'll get a Winnebago and I'll travel around Australia, and then I'll die and leave my Winnebago to my grandchildren or something. Like it has to be more than that. So I think longevity is committing to something bigger.
So we've been talking a lot about different things, and one of the things So before we finish, just one last question.
You should conclude by asking my one adulting tip.
But Pastor Joel, it's been awesome having you here. You've given us so much gold, so much advice.
Man,
Legit
silver,
gold.
platinum.
Legit gold, 24 carat.
Platinum, more expensive, thank you.
Pastor Joel, you have given us so much platinum to think about.
What do you mean platinum?
Pastor Joel, you have given us
Adulting!
Pastor Joel, you've given us so much
Why
platinum.
are his knees so hairy? And his arms aren't.
You can thank Egypt for that.
Whoa, my whole world has been changed through this. I epilate my arms like I did it yesterday, and man, it comes back in bushy.
What's epilate?
You guys know what an epilator is?
Is that the thing that
This
literally
rips
pulls
your
the
hair
hair
out,
out?
yeah. It's good, makes you feel
You
alive.
did it yesterday.
What?
Can we get a zoom in on his arm?
Can you edit them so that they're smooth?
Yeah,
Put a lady's arm there.
for sure. Done. Up there. Can
My
we?
sponsored product. My sponsored product. You can put anything you want in there. As long as they pay me.
Do you have any advice that you would like to give the young adults of Celebration Church, or even young adults that are not from here watching? One thing that you would want to give advice to?
We were just wondering if there's any advice you'd like to give the young adults.
The advice for young adults.
Some advice. Do you have anything?
You just want to look right at the camera and just say,
No.
say some advice.
No.
Do you have any advice for me?
Yeah, no, I don't have anything to say.
Cool.
Is that the adulting tip?
This is the last question. We'll do the adulting tip after.
All I can think about is my adulting tip
Okay,
now.
we'll do the
No,
adulting tip.
Wait!
I was happy for that to be
Stop
the
it!
adulting.
Stop it!
Adulting tip number 6.
6. I say it now? Now?
Adulting tip number 6.
Well, here we are. Adulting.
so much wisdom and things to work with today.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, is there any piece of advice you'd like to give the young adults? Just the last bit of wisdom for them.
Almost like a young adult. Adulting tip number 6! Yes, Mark asked me if I had an adulting tip, and it's this. It is act your wage. I didn't say that like a baby. My wage is 31. Like wage, like money.
Oh.
Money, got it? Like
God,
wage.
why is it a baby?
And a baby you say like, wow, wage.
Okay.
Act your wage. I think one of the things that, let's just use like Australia for example, or any, as soon as you chuck like young adults, especially young professionals, implies that they should, have this, have that, look like they're, I think acting your wage is making decisions financially that's like, oh, can I or can't I afford that? Because like a lot of people act like they can afford $160 a takeaway a week. And like, where I grew up in the Cres, every single house that was housing commissions suddenly had enough money for Ozstar. Like you can't drive in my old neighbourhood without seeing an Ozstar dish, hashtag $80 a month on every single. So I think making a decision to actually look at what you have, and then when you make a decision when it comes to finance, as young adults, to be like, oh, can I afford this car twice, or shouldn't I get it yet? Should I save this right now, or am I happy paying double the price because I'm doing interest? Or should I have a house, or shouldn't I have a house? Or should I buy that, or shouldn't I buy that? I think instead of just acting what you think everyone should see, actually acting a little bit of what your finances are, so that you can be faithful with them. So then you can be generous. You go to this room because you're not acting something that you aren't. So I'm going to buy $400 shoes because this week I got $550 pay. Okay, that's not acting your wage. So I think that's just a bit of a tip that I have on when it comes to young adults and being a little bit more financially wise. Don't just try and impress a whole bunch of people that genuinely don't care about what you're wearing or how much money you're spending. Like they don't. If they do, they're super weird or you're super famous. So no one cares. So I think just hashtag act your wage. I'm like the Koshi of this church.
Everyone loves Koshi.
Honestly, you should, because you're pretty much a cash cow right now. Sunrise joke. Good, hey?
What's good?
Tune in tomorrow, 6 a.m, 7 Network.
That's all we have time for on today's podcast. We're super thankful to have Pastor Joel.
Thank you for having me, guys. Who reckons they're doing great? Like, subscribe.
See you next time.
Good to say bye.
I'll say it on behalf of you.
Goodbye, everyone. We'll see you next time. It's Maddie signing off for Young Adults on Loose Focus. Goodbye.
That's good, guys. That's so good. Wow, this is just...
I don't know what to do with it.
This has just been such a good time. I just feel, wow, we've really done something good here today.
Over to you.
Wow, we have, I think we can all agree, all in this room together, what a thing has happened here with all of us. Mim's in. He's right.